The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and destiny. But what happens when something arrives that was forged outside the Force's reach? A warrior who has killed gods, shattered pantheons, and walked through realms where the Force does not exist. The galaxy was about to learn that some threats come not from within, but from the void between realities themselves. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The dimensional tear opened above Lothal like a wound in space, silent and terrible. No hyperspace signature, no ship, just a rupture in the fabric of reality that burned with colors that shouldn't exist, and through it fell a single figure, wreathed in frost and flame. He hit the ground in the planet's western barrens with the force of a meteor, cratering the Earth and sending shockwaves rippling across kilometers of dead grassland. When the dust settled, Kratos, the Ghost of Sparta, God-killer, destroyer of Olympus, rose from the impact site with the Leviathan axe gripped in one hand and murder in his ash-white eyes. He didn't know where he was. The last thing he remembered was the Bifrost tearing itself apart during his battle with Heimdall's vengeful brother, reality fragmenting around him as conflicting magics collided. Now he stood beneath an unfamiliar sky, twin suns beating down on red-marked skin that had seen centuries of war. The air tasted wrong, metallic, polluted. In the distance, massive angular ships hung in the atmosphere like predatory birds, their gray hulls adorned with symbols he didn't recognize. Kratos' divine senses, still adjusting to this realm's strange energies, detected something pervasive in the air itself, a living current that touched everything, connected everything. It wasn't the magic he knew. It felt older, more fundamental, and it pressed against his being like an unwelcome tide. His weapons responded strangely. The Leviathan axe frost runes flickered uncertainly, and the blades of chaos at his back burned cooler than they should. Whatever this place was, its laws were not his laws. A sound reached him, mechanical, rhythmic. Engines. Kratos turned as three angular craft screamed overhead, their wings folded in attack formation. They bore the same symbol as the massive ships, a circular emblem he would later learn represented an empire that ruled this entire galaxy through fear and overwhelming force. The craft, TIE fighters, though he had no name for them yet, circled once, scanning, analyzing the crater and the impossible readings coming from the figure standing within it. Then they opened fire. Green energy bolts lanced down, and Kratos moved on pure instinct honed through countless battles. He rolled, the blaster fire scorching the earth where he'd stood, and hurled the Leviathan axe in a single fluid motion. The axe sheared through the first TIE fighter's cockpit, the pilot's scream cut short as the craft exploded in a ball of fire. Kratos extended his hand, and the axe returned to his grip, pulled by the same runic magic that had served him across realms. The remaining fighters broke formation, pilots shouting confused reports into their comms. "Command, the target he threw something. It came back to him," requesting. The second pilot never finished. Kratos had already closed the distance with a leap that should have been impossible, his legs propelling him 15 meters into the air. He caught the TIE fighter's wing, wrenched it with godly strength until metal screamed and tore, and then rode it down as it spiraled into the ground. The third pilot broke off, fleeing toward the Imperial garrison visible on the horizon. Kratos let him go. He needed answers, and terrified survivors provided those better than corpses. The Ghost of Sparta walked toward the distant city, leaving burning wreckage in his wake. He didn't know he'd just announced his presence to an empire that tolerated no threats. He didn't know that in the capital city of Lothal, an Inquisitor named the Eighth Brother had just felt a disturbance. Not in the Force precisely, but something that made the Force itself recoil. He didn't know that Grand Admiral Thrawn was already reviewing the combat footage with those calculating red eyes, recognizing that something entirely unprecedented had entered his operational theater. All Kratos knew was that he was far from home. His weapons were weakened, and this place had just attacked him without provocation. In his experience, that meant war. And war was something Kratos understood better than anything else in any realm. As he walked, the blades of chaos whispered against his back, their chains rattling with barely contained fury. Above, more Imperial ships began converging on his position. The twin suns cast his shadow long across the barren earth, and in that shadow, the ghost of every god he'd killed seemed to walk with him. The Empire wanted to know what he was. They would learn, but the lesson would be written in blood and ash, as all of Kratos' lessons were. The dimensional refugees' war with a galactic empire had begun, and neither side yet understood the true scope of what was coming. In the Force, Darth Vader paused mid-meditation aboard his Star Destroyer, sensing something his master would need to know about, something that tasted of rage older than the Sith themselves. The Inquisitorius arrived at dawn. Kratos had spent the night in the ruins of an abandoned settlement, his body recovering from the dimensional crossing, while his mind cataloged everything wrong about this realm. The pervasive energy, this force he could feel but not touch, interfered with his divine essence in ways that frustrated him. His regeneration was slower. The Leviathan axe's recall felt sluggish, as though fighting through water. Even Spartan rage, that berserker state that had carried him through hell itself, bubbled beneath his skin with less intensity than it should. But he was still Kratos, still the god killer, and when the black-clad figures descended from their sleek Imperial shuttle, lightsabers igniting with crimson fury, he was ready. The Eighth Brother led them, a Tyrannian Django jumper, whose yellow eyes gleamed with sadistic anticipation. Flanking him were the Fifth Brother, a hulking Pauwan with a double-bladed spinning saber, and the Seventh Sister, a Murialan whose elegant features belied her cruelty. They had hunted Jedi, broken Force sensitives, and served Vader's purge with fanatical dedication. They expected another terrified Force user, perhaps strong, but ultimately just another name to add to their count. "You are the anomaly," the Eighth Brother announced, his voice carrying the casual arrogance of a predator addressing prey. "The Emperor has sensed your arrival. You will come with us, or you will be eliminated. The choice, briefly, is yours." Kratos said nothing. He simply lifted the Leviathan axe, frost already forming along its blade despite the heat of Lothal's morning. His eyes, those pitiless gray eyes that had stared down Olympian gods and Nordic deities, fixed on the Inquisitors with an expression they suddenly, viscerally did not like. "We choose elimination," the Fifth Brother rumbled, and they attacked as one. The Force had never encountered anything like Kratos before. When the Inquisitors reached out to crush his windpipe with telekinesis, they found their power sliding off him like water off stone. His divine nature, even weakened, provided resistance to their metaphysical assault. He wasn't Force-sensitive in any way they understood. He existed outside their framework entirely, and that made him simultaneously vulnerable and terrifyingly unpredictable. The Seventh Sister struck first, her lightsaber humming as it descended toward his neck. Kratos caught the blade on the Leviathan axe's haft, and the collision sent sparks showering across the ruins. The plasma blade bit into the enchanted Uru metal, but didn't sever it. Brock and Sindri's craftsmanship transcended even this galaxy's advanced technology. Kratos twisted, redirecting her strike, and drove his fist into her sternum with enough force to crack ribs even through her armor. She flew backward, gasping. The fifth brother's spinning saber came next, the double blade whirling in a deadly helicopter pattern meant to overwhelm defenses. Kratos had fought the Valkyries. He knew spinning death when he saw it. He stepped inside the Inquisitor's guard, impossibly fast for someone his size, and grabbed the fifth brother's wrist mid-swing. Bones snapped, the Pauan screamed, and Kratos wrenched the lightsaber free, deactivated it with a contemptuous squeeze that shattered the hilt's mechanism, and headbutted the Inquisitor hard enough to crack his elongated skull. Impossible, the eighth brother hissed, but there was fear in his voice now, real fear. He had touched Vader's presence, had touched the dark side's depths, but this was different. This warrior moved with a brutality that predated the Force itself, a violence so pure and practiced it didn't need mystical energy to be devastating. The eighth brother unleashed a barrage of Force lightning, electricity arcing from his fingertips in a storm of Sith fury. It struck Kratos square in the chest, and for a moment the Inquisitor thought he'd won. Then Kratos walked through it. The lightning scorched his skin, made his muscles spasm, but his divine constitution, forged through Zeus's betrayal, tempered in the river Styx, hardened by Fimbul winter, refused to yield. He'd endured the lightning of the king of Olympus. This was painful, yes, but pain was an old companion. Kratos reached the eighth brother, grabbed him by the throat, and lifted him off his feet. The Inquisitor clawed at the iron grip, his lightsaber forgotten, suddenly understanding with perfect clarity why the Force itself seemed to recoil from this being. This wasn't a Force user. This wasn't even something that belonged in their galaxy. This was something older, something that killed powers like theirs for sport.
Where am I? Kratos' voice was a gravelly rumble, each word deliberate and heavy with threat. Lothal, the eighth brother choked out. Outer Rim. Empire controls this empire. Who rules it? Emperor Palpatine, Darth Sidious, most powerful Force user. The Inquisitor's eyes widened in sudden terror. Vader. Lord Vader will come for you. He'll... Kratos squeezed, and the eighth brother's neck snapped like a twig. He dropped the corpse and turned to the other two Inquisitors, who were struggling to their feet, their confidence shattered. The seventh sister was already running for the shuttle, her warrior's instinct overriding her pride. The fifth brother stumbled after her, cradling his shattered wrist. Kratos let them go. He learned what he needed. This empire ruled through Force users, and they feared someone named Vader. Good. Fear was useful. Fear meant they'd come to him, and he wouldn't have to waste time hunting down answers. He retrieved the Leviathan axe and noticed the frost runes glowing stronger now, as if the weapon was adapting to this realm's physics. The blades of chaos at his back radiated heat, more familiar now, too. His divine essence was acclimating, slowly integrating with this galaxy's fundamental energies. Soon he'd be at full strength. Soon the Force itself would have to acknowledge that something it couldn't categorize or control walked among the stars. The Imperial shuttle fled into the sky, carrying its broken warriors and their terrifying report. Kratos watched it go, then turned his attention to the garrison city on the horizon. Smoke rose from its industrial sectors. The Empire strip mining this world for resources, enslaving its people in factories, crushing resistance beneath metal boots. He'd seen this before. Different worlds, different tyrants, same story. Olympus had ruled through divine mandate and called it justice. Odin had controlled the 9 realms through prophecy and manipulation. Now this empire did the same with its force users and technology. The details changed. The fundamental abuse of power never did. Kratos had sworn he was done with gods and their wars. He had wanted only to be left alone, to live quietly with with Atreus. But this realm had attacked him first, had sent its servants to either capture or kill him, had made the choice for him. The Ghost of Sparta began walking toward the city, his pace measured, his weapons ready. He didn't know that the 7th sister was already broadcasting a priority alert to Darth Vader himself. He didn't know that footage of his fight had reached Imperial intelligence, where analysts were frantically trying to explain how someone resisted Force abilities and broke Imperial technology with his bare hands. He didn't know that in the city ahead, a small rebel cell was monitoring Imperial communications and had just heard rumors of someone who fought 3 Inquisitors alone and won. All Kratos knew was that if this empire wanted war, he would give them the only thing he'd ever been truly good at: destruction. Absolute, inevitable, godly destruction. The Force trembled. Something had entered the galaxy that it couldn't predict, couldn't control, and couldn't stop. And in the ancient Sith temple on Mustafar, Darth Vader ignited his lightsaber and prepared to meet this anomaly personally.
The rebellion found Kratos before he found them. He was 3 kilometers from the Imperial garrison when the hooded figures emerged from the rocky outcroppings, blasters trained but not firing. 5 of them, dressed in mismatched armor and civilian clothes, the desperate patchwork uniform of insurgents across any realm. Their leader was a Twi'lek woman with scars crossing her blue skin, eyes that had seen too much death, and a stance that spoke of military training. "Don't shoot," she said quickly, her voice urgent. "We're not with the Empire. We saw what you did to the Inquisitors." She lowered her blaster slightly, a gesture of tentative trust. "My name is Cham Syndulla. We're part of the rebellion, and we need to talk before Vader arrives." Kratos stopped, the Leviathan axe resting on his shoulder. His expression remained impassive, but he listened. Survival meant gathering intelligence, understanding the terrain, literal and political. These rebels were clearly enemies of his enemies, but that didn't automatically make them allies. "Vader," Kratos repeated, the name unfamiliar on his tongue. The one the Inquisitor feared. She nodded grimly. "Darth Vader, the Emperor's enforcer, Dark Lord of the Sith. He's killed more Jedi than anyone in history, crushed entire rebellions single-handedly. The Inquisitors you fought, they're terrified of him, and he's coming here because of you." She paused, studying him. "What are you? You're not a Jedi. You're not even Force-sensitive, but you took down 3 Inquisitors like they were nothing." "I am Kratos." He said nothing more, offering no explanation, no context. Let them draw their own conclusions. One of the rebels, a young human male with a scarred face, stepped forward. "Whatever you are, you've got the Empire scared. That's good enough for us. We've been fighting them for years. Sabotage, intelligence gathering, evacuating refugees. But it's not enough. We're losing. Slowly, but we're losing." His voice carried the exhaustion of a war with no end in sight. "If you can hurt them like you hurt those Inquisitors, we can work together." Kratos' eyes narrowed. "I work alone." "Then you'll die alone," Cham said bluntly. "You don't know this galaxy.
You don't know Imperial tactics, their technology, their numbers. They have star destroyers that can glass entire planets from orbit. They have armies of stormtroopers, legions of war machines, and they have Vader. She gestured to the city in the distance. That garrison has 10,000 troops. You're strong, stronger than anything I've ever seen, but you can't fight an empire alone. Kratos had heard similar arguments before, from allies in Sparta, from gods who wanted to use him, from those who thought collective strength outweighed individual power. He'd always proven them wrong, but he also wasn't foolish enough to ignore tactical reality. He was in an unknown realm, his powers still adapting, facing an enemy whose capabilities he didn't fully understand. "What do you want?" he asked. Cham's expression hardened with determination. "Help us hit the garrison. There's a transport arriving tomorrow, prisoners being shipped to the spice mines of Kessel, families mostly, civilians who spoke out against the Empire. We've been planning a rescue, but our window closes when Vader arrives. With your help, we can pull it off. And if I refuse, then we try anyway and probably die," the young rebel said quietly. "But at least we die fighting for something." Kratos recognized that resignation, that acceptance of death for a cause. He'd seen it in Spartan warriors facing impossible odds, in the Aesir preparing for Ragnarok. It was the look of those who had nothing left to lose but their defiance. He understood it because he'd worn that expression himself when he'd climbed Mount Olympus to kill Zeus. But this wasn't his fight. These weren't his people. He owed this galaxy nothing, and he'd learned the hard way that involving himself in others' wars only led to more death, more suffering. He should walk away, find a ship, find a way home, and leave these rebels to their doomed resistance. But then he remembered the footage the Inquisitors had no doubt sent. The Empire already knew about him. They were already coming. Vader was already on his way. Walking away wouldn't save him from this fight. It would only ensure he faced it without any intelligence about his enemy. "Tell me about Vader," Kratos said. Relief flashed across Cham's face, quickly suppressed. She gestured toward a hidden cave system behind the outcroppings, and the rebels led him inside to their makeshift base. Holoprojectors displayed tactical data, maps of the garrison, and at the center of it all, an image that made even these hardened fighters flinch. A towering figure in black armor, lightsaber blazing red, standing amidst the corpses of Jedi.
"Darth Vader," Cham began, her voice taking on the cadence of someone reciting a nightmare. "Once, a Jedi Knight named Anakin Skywalker, greatest warrior of the Clone Wars. He fell to the dark side, helped the Emperor execute Order 66, the genocide of the Jedi Order. Now, he's more machine than man, kept alive by that armor after being burned alive on Mustafar. He can crush starships with the Force, choke people across star systems, and his lightsaber technique is flawless. We've lost entire cells trying to fight him." Kratos studied the hologram with the analytical eye of a warrior who'd faced countless powerful opponents. The armor was fully sealed, environmental protection, life support. The lightsaber was a plasma weapon, superheated to cutting temperatures. The Force abilities included telekinesis, precognition, and various forms of energy manipulation. Formidable, certainly, but every enemy had weaknesses. Every armor had joints. Every warrior had patterns. "He's killed gods?" Kratos asked. The rebels looked confused. "Gods? No, there are no gods, just the Force and those who wield it." A thin, cold smile crossed Kratos' face, the first genuine expression the rebels had seen from him. "Then he has never fought one." The confidence in that statement was absolute, unshakable. It wasn't arrogance, it was the simple acknowledgement of fact by someone who had literally killed pantheons. Vader might be powerful by this galaxy's standards, but Kratos had fought beings who wielded the fundamental forces of reality itself. He'd killed Ares, the god of war. He'd killed Zeus, the king of Olympus. He'd killed Baldur, who was blessed with invulnerability to all threats, physical and magical. One more wouldn't make a difference. "Show me your plan for the garrison," Kratos said, and the rebels scrambled to display the tactical layout. As they outlined their strategy, a distraction at the main gate, while a team breached the detention center, Kratos dissected it with brutal efficiency. Too complicated, too many moving parts, too much reliance on coordination and luck. "You want the prisoners," he said flatly. "Where are they held?" Cham pointed to the detention center on the hologram's eastern side. "Here, but there are automated defenses, 3 guard rotations, and I will go there." Kratos traced a direct line from their position to the detention center, cutting through the garrison's heart. "Draw their forces to me. Free your people while they are distracted." "That's suicide," the young rebel protested. "You'll have the entire garrison on you." Kratos hefted the Leviathan axe, feeling its weight, feeling the frost runes pulse with growing strength as they adapted to this realm. "Good. They will learn what happens when they stand between me and my purpose." The rebels stared at him, caught between hope and horror at this stranger's casual acceptance of impossible odds. They didn't understand that for Kratos, this was just another day, another fight, another step on a path soaked in the blood of those who'd challenged him. Tomorrow, the Empire would learn that lesson firsthand.
Dawn broke over Lothal with fire and fury. Kratos walked through the garrison's main gate as the first sun crested the horizon and the world exploded into violence. Stormtroopers scrambled from their posts, alarms shrieking across the compound, officers shouting confused orders as their sensors registered a single figure striding into their heavily fortified position. Blaster fire erupted from guard towers, from barricades, from hastily assembled firing lines, dozens of troopers unleashing concentrated volleys that should have vaporized any living thing. Kratos didn't slow down. The Leviathan axe spun in his grip, deflecting bolts with the precision of centuries of combat experience. Those that hit him scorched his skin, burned through the leather of his belt, but his divine constitution absorbed punishment that would have killed a normal man 10 times over. Pain was information. Information was tactical advantage. He processed every hit, cataloged which angles the Empire favored, identified firing patterns and weaknesses in their formation. Then he reached the first defensive line and showed them what a god-killer could do. The Leviathan axe cleaved through a stormtrooper's plastoid armor like it was paper, frost exploding from the impact point and freezing 3 more troopers solid mid-scream. Kratos wrenched the weapon free and hurled it in a devastating arc that bisected 2 E-Web heavy repeating blasters and their crews before recalling it to his hand. The blades of chaos uncoiled from his back with a rattling scream, and he became a whirlwind of fire and steel. The chains allowed him to strike at range, the blades cutting through armor and flesh with equal ease as he spun and dodged with impossible agility for his size. A stormtrooper captain tried to coordinate a flanking maneuver. Kratos' blade wrapped around the man's rifle, yanked him off his feet, and dragged him into a brutal knee strike that caved in his helmet. An AT-ST Walker thundered into view, its chin-mounted cannons tracking the Spartan warrior. Kratos grabbed a nearby speeder bike with one hand and hurled it, all 200 kilograms of Imperial engineering, directly into the Walker's cockpit viewport.
The explosion was spectacular. The Empire had never encountered anything like this. Their tactics were designed for conventional warfare: overwhelming firepower, superior numbers, technological dominance. But Kratos fought like a force of nature made flesh, adapting to their weapons in real time, learning from each exchange, growing more efficient with every kill. His Spartan training had been honed against the armies of Greece. His godly experience encompassed wars against Olympian forces and Nordic armies. The Empire's troops, well-trained as they were, fought with the hesitation of those who could die. Kratos fought with the certainty of someone who had died before and refused to let it stop him. In the garrison's command center, Colonel Brahm watched the tactical displays with mounting horror. His garrison was being dismantled by a single combatant. Every squad he sent died. Every vehicle was destroyed. The anomaly, they still didn't have a better name for it, moved through his soldiers like they were training dummies. And worst of all, the carnage was driving his forces toward the garrison's center, away from the detention block on the eastern perimeter. He's hurting us, Brahm realized with growing dread. This is a diversion. All units, detention center, now. But the rebels were already there. While Kratos painted the garrison red, Cham's team breached the detention center's auxiliary entrance using stolen access codes. They moved fast and quiet, stunning guards before alarms could sound, slicing through security systems with experienced precision. The prisoners, mostly families, some rebel sympathizers, a few captured insurgents, stared in disbelief as cell doors opened and freedom beckoned. "Move, move," Cham urged, shepherding them toward the concealed transport ships waiting beyond the garrison's outer wall. The young rebel from yesterday, his name was Jorel, provided covering fire as Imperial reinforcements finally realized what was happening and redirected. The two operations collided at the garrison's center courtyard. Kratos emerged from a burning barracks to find himself facing not just stormtroopers, but the garrison's heavy armor, 3 AT-AT walkers, their massive legs shaking the ground with each step, their forward cannons already tracking his position. Behind them, TIE fighters screamed overhead, having been scrambled from the nearby Imperial airfield. The Empire had committed everything remaining to stopping him. The walkers fired simultaneously, and Kratos dove behind a reinforced bunker as turbo-laser fire atomized the space where he had stood. The TIE fighters strafed the courtyard, blaster bolts chewing up the ground. He was pinned, outgunned, and exactly where he needed to be. The Empire's full attention fixed on him while the rebels completed their extraction. Spartan rage had been building since the fight began, that ancient fury demanding release. Kratos had kept it leashed, controlled, but now he let it slip. His eyes blazed with red light, his skin flushed with divine power, and when he roared, it was a sound that transcended language, pure primal fury that had echoed across battlefields for millennia. He charged the nearest AT-AT. Blaster fire washed over him, burning, searing, but rage made him unstoppable. He leaped impossibly high and caught the walker's leg mid-stride. The Leviathan axe bit into the joint mechanism, frost runes flaring as they flash-froze hydraulics and servos. Metal shrieked. The walker's leg buckled. Kratos climbed even as it fell, riding it down, and before the crew could react, he torn through the cockpit hatch with his bare hands. The crew inside had 1 second.
Darth Vader descended the ramp. He was exactly as the hollows depicted, towering, armored in black, cape flowing behind him like a shadow given form. His helmeted head turned slowly, surveying the destruction. Hundreds of his soldiers dead, walkers destroyed, the garrison in ruins. All caused by the ash-skinned warrior standing before him, covered in blood and burns, but utterly unbowed. Impressive. Darth Vader's voice rumbled through his vocabulator, each word resonating with mechanical menace. You have destroyed an entire garrison, killed Inquisitors, defied the Empire. He ignited his lightsaber, the crimson blade casting demonic shadows across the courtyard. Now you will face the consequence of your defiance. Kratos dropped from the fallen walker, the Leviathan axe finding his grip as naturally as breathing. The blades of chaos ignited with hellfire that had never belonged to this galaxy. Across the courtyard, two warriors, one forged in the fires of galactic conquest, one baptized in the blood of pantheons, faced each other. "I have killed gods," Kratos said, his voice like grinding stone. "What are you?" Darth Vader's only answer was to extend his hand. The Force seized Kratos with crushing pressure, attempting to snap his neck, his spine, every bone in his divine body. For anyone else, it would have been instant death. For Kratos, it was merely uncomfortable. His divine nature, now fully integrated with this realm, provided resistance that Vader had never encountered. The Sith Lord's eyes, hidden behind his mask, would have widened in shock had they been visible. Kratos walked forward through the telekinetic assault, each step deliberate, unstoppable. Vader increased the pressure, channeling more of the dark side than he used against any Jedi, and still the warrior advanced. Impossible. This being wasn't connected to the Force, couldn't be sensed through it, resisted it as though it were merely another obstacle to overcome. Vader released the Force grip and attacked. Their weapons met with a sound like reality tearing. Lightsaber against enchanted Uru metal, plasma against God-forged alloy, Sith combat mastery against Spartan perfection. They moved faster than the watching soldiers could follow, Vader's Form 5 precision meeting Spartan's brutal efficiency. The Dark Lord used the Force to hurl debris, to attack from multiple angles, to press advantages no normal opponent could counter. Kratos adapted, dodged, retaliated with throws of the Leviathan axe that forced even Vader to defend. The fight was legendary. Vader's lightsaber carved burning lines across Kratos' torso. Kratos' blades of chaos found gaps in Vader's armor, drew sparks from his life support. They battled across the ruined garrison, neither giving ground, neither able to gain decisive advantage. Vader was powerful, more powerful than perhaps any Force user Kratos would face in this galaxy, but he'd been diminished by his injuries on Mustafar. His suit limited his mobility, and Kratos had fought wounded gods before. The battle reached its crescendo when Vader unleashed Force lightning directly from his hands, despite the pain it caused his cybernetics. The electricity arced into Kratos with the fury of the dark side, and this time, already weakened from the garrison fight, from the Walker confrontations, it drove him to one knee. Vader advanced for the kill, and that's when he heard it. The rebel transports lifting off from beyond the garrison wall, prisoners safely aboard, escaping under cover of this battle's chaos. The realization hit him immediately. This entire assault had been a diversion. This warrior had sacrificed himself to buy time for insignificant refugees. The distraction cost him. Kratos surged upward, caught Vader's wrist mid-strike, and headbutted him with skull-cracking force. The Dark Lord staggered. The Leviathan axe came around in a brutal arc that would have decapitated him if Vader hadn't thrown himself backward using the Force. They separated, both warriors breathing hard, one mechanically, one with the ragged gasps of divine exhaustion. "This isn't finished," Vader promised, his voice carrying the weight of inevitable vengeance. "No," Kratos agreed, already backing towards the garrison wall, toward the escape route the rebels had left for him. He ran, not from fear, but from tactical necessity. He'd accomplished his goal. The prisoners were free, and he'd learned what he needed to know. Vader was powerful, but not invincible. The Empire could be hurt, and in this galaxy of Force users and destiny, sometimes the greatest weapon was someone who existed outside their prophecies entirely. Vader watched him go, not pursuing. The garrison was destroyed, the prisoners escaped, but he'd faced the anomaly and survived, learned its capabilities, identified its weaknesses. Next time would be different. Behind his mask, Vader allowed himself a grim smile. The Emperor would be interested in this. Very interested indeed.
The rebellion's hidden base on Lothal's northern moon became Kratos' temporary refuge, though he rejected the word. He didn't hide, he recovered, planned, and prepared for what he knew was inevitable. The Empire would come again. Vader would come again. And next time, one of them would not walk away. 3 days had passed since the garrison battle. The rescued prisoners had been evacuated to safer systems, their gratitude expressed in ways Kratos found uncomfortable. Tears, embraces, proclamations of him as a hero. He'd done what needed doing, nothing more. Heroes were for stories. He dealt in survival and consequence. Cham found him in the base's observation deck, staring out at Lothal's scarred surface below. The planet bore the Empire's fingerprints, strip mines, industrial complexes, orbital construction yards churning out star destroyers, an entire world consumed to feed the war machine. The rebellion's hidden base on Lothal's northern moon became Kratos' temporary refuge, though he rejected the word. He didn't hide. He recovered, planned, and prepared for what he knew was inevitable. The Empire would come again. Vader would come again. And next time, one of them would not walk away. 3 days had passed since the garrison battle. The rescued prisoners had been evacuated to safer systems, their gratitude expressed in ways Kratos found uncomfortable. Tears, embraces, proclamations of him as a hero. He'd done what needed doing, nothing more. Heroes were for stories. He dealt in survival and consequence. Cham found him in the base's observation deck, staring out at Lothal's scarred surface below. The planet bore the Empire's fingerprints, strip mines, industrial complexes, orbital construction yards churning out star destroyers, an entire world consumed to feed the war machine. "The Rebellion wants to meet you," she said without preamble. "Command has been monitoring Imperial communications. You've become significant. They're calling you the Ghost in their reports. Command thinks you could be a symbol, something to rally people who've lost hope." "I am not a symbol." Kratos' voice carried finality. "I am not your weapon." "No," Cham agreed, surprising him. "You're something the Empire can't predict, can't categorize, can't control. That terrifies them more than any fleet. But you're also alone in a galaxy you don't understand, fighting an enemy with endless resources." She moved to stand beside him. "The Rebellion isn't asking you to join. We're offering information, resources, and one thing you'll need eventually, a way home." That got his attention. Kratos turned to face her fully. "Explain." "The Empire has been experimenting with hyperspace anomalies, trying to create stable wormholes for instant travel across the galaxy. Their research facilities might have technology that could replicate whatever brought you here, maybe even reverse it." Cham pulled up a datapad displaying technical schematics. "There's an Imperial research station orbiting Scarif. Heavy security, but if anyone could breach it, it's you." Kratos studied the schematics with the focus of a warrior analyzing a fortress. Scarif. The name meant nothing to him, but the layout spoke volumes. Orbital defense platforms, shield gates, garrison of specialized death troopers. The Empire protected this facility because it contained something valuable. If there was technology that could tear through dimensions, could send him back to his son, what does the rebellion gain? He'd learned long ago that no offer came without price. You help us hit Imperial targets on the way to Scarif. Weapons facilities, supply depots, communication arrays. Nothing that requires you to become one of us. Just targets that hurt the Empire and clear your path to the research station. Cham's expression hardened with determination. And when Vader comes for you again, and he will, you won't face him alone. I always fight alone. Not by choice, I think. Her words carried unexpected insight. You fight alone because you've lost everyone you fought beside. I've seen that look before in soldiers who survived when their brothers didn't. But this galaxy's not your war, Kratos. You don't owe us anything. So take what we offer and use it to get home. The Spartan considered her words, measuring them for manipulation or hidden agenda. He found none. Cham was a soldier offering a soldier's bargain. Mutual benefit, clear objectives, no pretense of loyalty beyond tactical necessity. It was honest in a way God's promises never were. "Show me the targets," he said. Over the following weeks, Kratos became a phantom that haunted the Empire's nightmares. He struck an Imperial weapons depot on Caldero's station, demolishing their stockpiles and leaving no survivors. He infiltrated a communication hub on Ord Mantell, his brutal efficiency allowing rebel slicers to extract intelligence before the facility's destruction. Each attack was precise, devastating, and utterly lacking in mercy. The Empire learned to fear garrison assignments in the Outer Rim, where the Ghost might appear and reduce entire installations to ash and corpses. But Vader was learning too. The Dark Lord studied every engagement, every tactical report, every scrap of footage showing Kratos in combat. He identified patterns, the enemy's tendency to draw enemy forces into close quarters where superior numbers meant nothing, his resistance to force abilities requiring direct physical intervention, the slight delay when recalling that frost-enchanted axe. Weaknesses were minimal, but Vader had built his reputation on exploiting the minimal. The Emperor, in his infinite cruelty, was pleased by this development. "A challenge worthy of you, Lord Vader," Palpatine had rasped through the hologram. "This anomaly represents chaos, unpredictability, everything the Sith must master. Bring him before me, alive if possible. Such power could be useful." Vader bowed in acknowledgement, but privately he knew Kratos would never kneel. Some warriors were forged too hard, tempered in fires too intense to ever bend to the dark side's temptation. This being had killed gods, destroyed pantheons. He would die before submitting to the dark side's temptation, which meant their next encounter would end only one way. That encounter came at Scarif. Kratos infiltrated the research station alone, despite the rebellion's offer for support. This was his path, his goal. He wouldn't risk others for his chance at returning home. The station's security was formidable. Scan-proof corridors, rotating patrol patterns, automated defense systems. He moved through them like death itself, the Leviathan axe silencing guards before they could raise alarms, the blades of chaos dismantling security droids with surgical precision. The research data was stored in the station's central vault, behind blast doors and biometric locks. Kratos didn't bother with subtlety. He simply tore the doors from their frame with godly strength, alarms shrieking as he entered the vault. Rows of data terminals held the Empire's secrets, hyperspace calculations, dimensional theories, exotic energy signatures, and there in the central terminal, research on the exact type of dimensional rift that brought him here. He was downloading the data when the station's lights flickered. Emergency power activated, bathing everything in red. And through the vault's entrance walked Darth Vader, lightsaber already ignited, flanked by a battalion of death troopers in their distinctive black armor. Did you truly believe the Empire would leave such a facility unguarded? Vader's mechanical voice carried dark amusement. I have been waiting, Ghost. This time there will be no escape. The death troopers opened fire with SE-14R light repeating blasters, concentrated volleys designed to overwhelm even Jedi defenses. Kratos dove behind a terminal bank, feeling the data cylinder complete its download on his belt. The data was secured. Now he just had to survive long enough to use it. He threw the Leviathan axe in a wide arc, the weapon's trajectory calculated to ricochet off the vault's walls and strike multiple targets. 3 death troopers went down, frozen solid. Kratos recalled the axe and charged, the blades of chaos finding their marks in the confusion. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were elite, trained to fight Force users, equipped with armor that could withstand lightsaber strikes. But Kratos wasn't a Force user, and his weapons had been forged.
This time, the Dark Lord fought without restraint. He'd studied Kratos' patterns, adapted his Form V to account for the warrior's brutal efficiency. When Kratos threw the Leviathan axe, Vader used the Force to redirect it mid-flight, sending it careening into a wall. When Kratos attacked with the blades of chaos, Vader's lightsaber met each strike with perfect precision, his precognition allowing him to predict each movement. But Kratos had also learned. He'd studied how Vader moved, how the suit's life support systems required those chest-mounted controls, how the mechanical limbs had infinitesimal delays that biological ones didn't. He'd killed enough gods to recognize when an opponent's power came with built-in weaknesses. The battle raged through the vault, 2 warriors pushing each other to their absolute limits. Vader unleashed Force lightning that made Kratos' muscles seize, made his vision blur. But the Spartan endured as he'd endured Zeus's lightning, and retaliated with strikes that dented Vader's armor and drew sparks from his respiratory system. They crashed through terminals, shattered containment fields, their fight becoming a whirlwind of crimson plasma and enchanted steel. Vader seized Kratos with the Force, lifting him off his feet and hurled him through the vault wall into the station's reactor chamber. The Spartan crashed into a support pylon, pain exploding through his ribs, and looked up to see Vader advancing, lightsaber raised for a killing blow. Kratos grabbed a severed power conduit and jammed it into Vader's chestplate. Electricity arced through the Dark Lord's suit, overloading systems, disrupting his connection to the Force. Vader's lightsaber fell from spasming fingers as his life support screamed warnings. For a moment, just a moment, the unstoppable Sith Lord was vulnerable, human, hurt. Kratos could have killed him. His hand reached for the Leviathan axe, ready to deliver the death blow that would end this threat permanently. But he hesitated, seeing not Vader but Atreus in his mind, his son, who had taught him that not every enemy needed to die, that mercy was sometimes stronger than vengeance. It was a mistake. Vader recovered with Sith fury, channeling pain into power as his training demanded. The Force exploded outward, a shockwave that sent Kratos flying backward through the reactor's observation windows into space. Alarms shrieked as atmosphere vented, emergency bulkheads slamming shut to contain the breach. Kratos tumbled in vacuum, his divine constitution allowing him to survive where any human would have died instantly. He grabbed a passing piece of debris, used it to redirect his momentum toward a nearby shuttle pad where rebel ships were already screaming in for emergency extraction. Cham had been monitoring the station. When the battle started, she'd refused to leave him behind. Blaster fire from rebel Y-wings forced Vader back from the breach, prevented him from pursuing. The Dark Lord stood in the ruined vault, watching his quarry escape once more, and this time his rage was palpable. The Ghost had infiltrated an Imperial facility, stolen critical research, and survived their second confrontation. Unacceptable. But as Vader's breathing steadied and his systems recalibrated, he recognized something troubling. The warrior had hesitated, had chosen mercy over victory. That hesitation spoke of weakness, of sentiment, of attachments that could be exploited. The Ghost was powerful, perhaps the most dangerous opponent Vader had faced since his fall, but he was not invincible. Not when he still clung to conscience. The Emperor would know how to use that. Aboard the Rebel shuttle racing away from Scarif, Kratos clutched the data cylinder and felt its weight like destiny. The information to return home was here, stored in Imperial code and dimensional mathematics. But using it would require resources he didn't have, technology he didn't understand, and time the Empire would not grant. Cham placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture he would normally have rejected but found himself accepting. The rebellion has scientists, engineers, people who can decode that data and build what you need. But it'll take time, and Vader won't stop hunting you. "Let him hunt," Kratos said, his voice carrying the certainty of someone who had hunted gods and never failed. Outside the viewport, Scarif's orbital station burned, and across the galaxy, the Empire mobilized every resource to find the Ghost. Vader had been humiliated twice. The Emperor's patience was wearing thin. Across 1,000 systems, Star Destroyers changed course, intelligence networks activated, bounty hunters received their contracts. The largest manhunt in Imperial history had begun. But in the depths of Rebel space, Kratos began preparing for something no one in this galaxy had ever witnessed. A god-killer pushed to his absolute limit, fighting not for vengeance or duty, but for the simple right to return to his son. And when that goal was threatened, when every path home led through the Empire's forces, he would remind this galaxy why gods themselves had feared him. The Ghost of Sparta had survived Olympus's fall and Ragnarok's fury. The Galactic Empire would learn that some legends transcended dimensions, and some warriors could not be stopped by ships, soldiers, or even the Force itself.
The data cylinder's secrets were unlocked 3 months later in a hidden Rebel facility on Yavin 4, where Alliance engineers worked frantically to decode Imperial research that bordered on theoretical insanity. What they found was both promising and terrifying. The Empire had indeed been experimenting with dimensional rifts, puncturing the fabric of reality itself in their endless quests for strategic advantage. The technology existed to replicate the anomaly that had brought Kratos to this galaxy, but it required a power source beyond anything the rebellion possessed. A Kyber crystal array the size of a small moon, energy outputs that could only be generated by a Death Star. The irony wasn't lost on Kratos. To return home, he would need to infiltrate or destroy the Empire's ultimate weapon, the very symbol of their tyrannical power. The rebellion saw opportunity. If the Ghost could breach the Death Star, he could sabotage it from within, strike a blow that would shatter Imperial invincibility. But Kratos saw only what he'd always seen, another obstacle between him and his son, another enemy that needed to fall. When the rebellion spies confirmed the Death Star's location and Vader's presence aboard it, Kratos made his decision. He would go. Not for the rebellion's cause, not to become their symbol or their weapon, but because the path home led directly through the heart of the Empire's darkness. If he had to tear apart their superweapon to access the power he needed, so be it. He destroyed greater things for lesser reasons. Cham tried one last time to convince him to let others help, to coordinate with Alliance forces, to not throw his life away on a suicide mission. But Kratos simply looked at her with those ancient, pitiless eyes and said what he'd said from the beginning. "I work alone." The night before his departure, the younger rebel, Jorel, found him in the temple ruins, staring up at Yavin's gas giant. The others, they see you as this unstoppable force, this legend that'll save us all, Jorel said quietly. But I've watched you. You're not fighting for us. You're fighting to get back to someone. Family? My son, Kratos admitted, the words heavy with everything unsaid, every failure, every lesson learned too late, every moment of fatherhood stolen by war. Then you'll make it back, Jorel said with the certainty of youth, because that's what fathers do. They survive, they come home. Kratos said nothing, but something in his expression softened infinitesimally. This galaxy had tried to make him a hero, a symbol, a weapon. Only this boy understood the simple truth. He was just a father trying to return to his son. The stolen Imperial shuttle launched at dawn, cutting through Yavin 4's atmosphere toward the coordinates where destiny waited. The Death Star hung in space like a mechanical moon, bristling with weapons, humming with the dark side's power. Somewhere inside that battle station, Vader waited. Somewhere deeper still, the Kyber crystal array that could tear open reality itself. Kratos checked his weapons one final time. The Leviathan axe, now fully adapted to this galaxy's physics, thrummed with frost that could freeze stars. The blades of chaos burned with hellfire that never belonged to this reality and never would. His divine essence, no longer fighting the Force but coexisting alongside it, made him something unprecedented, neither Jedi nor Sith, neither light nor dark, but a third path forged in god blood and Spartan iron. As the shuttle approached the Death Star's hangar, every instinct screamed that this was a trap. Vader knew he was coming. The Empire had prepared for this confrontation. But Kratos had walked into traps before. Olympus had been a trap. The Temple of Pandora had been a trap. Every quest the gods had given him had been designed to kill him. And yet he still stood, still breathed, still fought. Because that's what he was. Not a hero, not a symbol, a survivor. A warrior who would tear apart galaxies to return to his son. The stolen Imperial shuttle landed in the Death Star's hangar to find it empty except for one figure standing in its center. Crimson lightsaber igniting in the artificial twilight. Darth Vader had been waiting, as they both knew he would be. Behind him, the hangar doors sealed shut with mechanical finality. No escape, no reinforcements, just two warriors who'd pushed each other to their breaking points, meeting one final time to settle what words never could.